Hey everybody, welcome back to another Nature's Always Right episode. Today I'm in Seymour, Tennessee, right outside of Knoxville, to visit my buddy Grant of Beech Grove Farm. And he's doing a lot of really fascinating things here on his small farm. Right behind me here is a swale system built on contour, planted out with all different perennials, fruit trees. He's got egg layers with a really cool mobile coop. He's also got a market garden as well as an agroforestry system, kind of silvopasture setup that he's doing down in a lower pasture. So lots of different things to learn in today's episode. So let's go meet Grant and have him show us all about it. So yeah, tell me about your mobile coop here. This thing is awesome.
Yeah, so I bought a pop-up camper off of Facebook Marketplace for a steal, $100. Brought it back to the house, tore down the camper part of it, which was disgusting, actually. I mean, this thing saw a lot of use, for sure. So
it's nicer with the chickens living in there.
Definitely. Smells better, looks better, yeah. So I tore that down, framed this out. I mean, it's kind of the classic mobile coop design. I've got the wire floor, some things to kind of make it my own. I haven't seen this a lot, but capturing the rainwater off the roof. It's really nice too, having one on either side, because then however it's set up, whatever angle, I don't have to mess around up with the tongue to lower it or raise it. I know that one of them is going to get filled, and then I'll just hook the hose that's gravity fed into a float valve for their water.
That's right here.
Yeah, I'll just hook the hose up to whichever one is filled for that point of time, or which one is going to fill. But yeah, I mean, the hen access doors.
How do you ever have to refill by hand with this water, or how, you know?
So we've had an especially dry summer, and I did have to refill. Actually, just a few weeks ago, I refilled one of them, and then we got a massive rain, and it filled to overflowing, the other one. And so I say massive rain, it was actually 3/4 of an inch, but it came down very suddenly. But yeah, filled it right up. That's the beauty too. I haven't run the math on this, but the roof's roughly 8 by 6, and so I don't know. You can quickly run some math and see how many gallons you're getting out of an inch of water.
So how many months of the year do you just not touch it and never have to water?
Yeah, so I mean, I've run it for 6 months, and that was the first time I filled it.
Yeah, cool. That's fun. That's pretty cool.
It's nice to be hands off, because too, like, this thing's off wherever on the farm. We've got 22 acres, and I don't have water running places, so that would be a real struggle to get water out to it all the time.
Big time.
This makes it very self-contained.
Yeah, great system.
And I was about to build some rollaway nest boxes, and as I was designing, I was like, man, this is a lot of work to build a rollaway nest box. Found these on Etsy, actually.
Really?
The company is Hen Gear. And I saw recently Josh Satin at Satin Hill Farms.
Oh yeah, Josh.
He has the same thing, and I like to see that that's catching on, because these are wonderful. They ship really clear instructions on how to put together. It took maybe 20 minutes to put it together. They hang in there, the rollaway nest boxes. I'm able to. Sometimes things don't roll away, and you got to reach in and grab, but. I'm able to block them out at night if I want, pull this up, grab the eggs in the morning if I want. If I'm blocking them out at night, I'll bring that back down.
Oh, that's nice. And you can block them, or it's a roost.
Yeah. And so it's good to go.
Very cool.
But yeah, I put the roof on with clear plastic to make it really easy for me to screw everything in, and then I realized, like, oh man, that's gonna be a total greenhouse for the hens, and it's gonna be so hot in the summer. So put this shade cloth up, and it's been perfect. I mean, it's so comfortable in here, even on the hottest days. A lot of airflow from the bottom and out through these vents.
So you got vents at the top, a little gap at the top.
So we got a little chimney effect going on.
Nice.
That keeps it cool, keeps it comfortable.
Perfect. Yeah. Really cool.
And then, so I mean, the biggest maintenance item, if you will, is just bring in 3 40-pound bags of feed. Right now it's about every 16 to 20 days to refill the feed. And
for how many chickens?
Yeah. So right now in this batch there are, I think, just shy of 40. Nice. We had an older hen expire on us recently. Actually, during our really hot spell, we had a week where heat index was like 100 plus each day, and I should have done a better job of making sure this was parked with more shade. You know, like underneath these two maples is a great spot.
Yeah.
Some poplars over there. But the particular day that she expired, like the only shade was right underneath it.
Yeah.
And so
good learning experience.
Live and learn.
Yeah, that's pretty hot too, though.
Yeah, it was pretty disgusting. Garden. I hate that we're starting on this side with these two rows. The tomatoes and peppers have definitely. It's a polyculture, actually, is what it is. It's a lot of it's a lot of weed pressure right now. You know, so we just had, my wife and I had our first child, a daughter. We had her April 1st, actually, April Fool's Day, which I love. But that's definitely presented some struggles, like with time and issues like that at the farm. And so there's some things that, just get totally pushed to the back burner. And this was one of them. But our tomatoes produce gangbusters really up until this real nasty heat the past 10 days or so. Same thing with the peppers. They've done really, really well. Actually, I've got a bunch of bell peppers here that have turned that I need to harvest soon. But I've been really happy with the production out of these beds for what it was. I mean, it was yard. I had some soil testing done. It was less than 1% organic matter.
Oh,
you know, it's a really heavy clay. Yeah. Like it's pretty nasty to try to grow food on. But I amended it with some rock dust, with some azomite, with a bunch of compost. I did an initial till with the BCS, and then now it's no till. Outside of, actually, I still run a broad fork right now, but I'm hoping to get to a point where I can be very, very low till or no till with it. But, you know, like these breakfast radishes have done really well.
Right, it looks super healthy.
Some Nelson, I think Nelson King or something here. Carrots have been kind of a mixed bag, especially in the heat, obviously, but I did some interplanting of carrots there. And then I had some old seed of carrots that not a single one germinated here. But yeah, some broccoli and Swiss chard. The spinach same thing with the heat. Oh my gosh, look at this flush of mushrooms. Dang. Wow.
That's crazy.
This is actually one of the beauties of the wood chips. For me, at least, I really like the wood chips in the path, because in the morning, especially after a rain, I mean, this thing is just flush with fungi, and I love seeing that. Yeah,
building their networks out and
helping
the soil.
So yeah, definitely some germination issues right now.
Yeah, and you guys are in the changeover season, right?
Yeah.
You guys, it's going in the fall here.
And so exactly, these 4 beds that we planted to some fall crops this week, but they had a cover crop earlier in the season, and then I tarped it. I didn't plant. I had beets in this far bed. I'm trying to think what I did in the spring. Beets and carrots, and then I went cover crop on all of it because just the soil was just so
Needs
poor.
Help. Yeah.
So did that. Basically did a chop and drop here in place with a mulching mower.
Cool.
And then tarped it, and now I've added compost, and it'll be time to plant.
So how'd you prep this land initially? Did you tarp this whole square with a...
So initially, I brought the hens in and let them do a lot of the work for me.
Oh, okay.
So I parked the eggmobile. I kind of started in the back corner with the eggmobile because they put the most pressure right under the eggmobile. One, that's where the most nitrogen drops, but 2, because of the sun and the heat, they'll congregate under there a lot. Okay. And so the grass is gone like in 3 or 4 days if you don't move it. Wow. So I knew what size my garden was. I put the electric net up, parked the eggmobile. And then every 3 days or 4 days, I would move the eggmobile, and I just kind of started moving it around. And by the time I got halfway, even where the eggmobile hadn't been, they had pretty much killed most of the grass.
Very cool.
So then I got them out of the way. Okay. That's when I ran strings, put the amendments and the compost, brought the BCS out, formed beds, and here we are.
And after doing that, there wasn't much grass that came up through the beds, or?
No, luckily, no.
Yeah, cool.
There were definitely some issues. Like this half of the garden had a tarp right from the get-go, so I had silage tarp on that, and then there definitely was a little bit of weed pressure from running that BCS more than anything. Yeah. On these beds that were exposed, but after one rotation of crops through, and just being really on top of weeding, It's been really good. Like these have been open and exposed. Granted, it's been really dry, but they've been open and exposed, sadly, for about 10 or 12 days now, and
nothing.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So really happy with that.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for showing me that. Yeah, I love seeing how people are prepping the land differently in different contexts, and it's good to get that information out there so people.
It is, and I'll tell you one thing though, it's a double-edged sword because there's so much information on how to prep your beds, and there's a little bit of reticence from me on when it's time to prep the bed. It's like, how do I want to do this? Like, I know there are so many ways that do work.
Right.
What is best for my context? And finally, my context was like, just get out there and do it.
Yes.
Like, use what you have on hand. And yeah, I just ran with it, and it's worked out pretty well.
And I wanted to ask you about your mulch, because it looks like you're using pine in some of the beds, and then some of them it's like your wood chip mulch. Have you found any differences between the two? Do you like one better over the other? Or
so
is it
it's actually, this is the cover crop killed off and dried out.
Okay.
So yeah, not pine at all actually.
Oh, my bad.
So yeah, it's just it's wood chip mulch. And what's nice is a local arborist had just sharpened his blades on his chipper, and is a really fine, good wood chip on one of his dumps, and I was like, that's the exact wood chip mulch I want to use in the garden. And so this is actually, I have refreshed the wood chip mulch on these beds and on these two paths here, and so you can see, I mean, there's basically nothing left here. I mean, it's been, we're talking about soil that's kind of lacks biology, but there's enough biology that a lot of that wood chip is gone now at this point.
Very cool.
So that's kind of exciting to see.
It is.
Yeah.
You've had pretty small pathways. Have you had any issues with the mulch like getting into your beds a little bit? Has that been an annoyance, or just kind of not bothered you, or it hasn't been an issue?
All of the above. It's I have had a little bit of trouble with that. I've got a young high school guy who works some hours for me, and he's helped me with mulching the paths. And as with anyone who works for you, especially if you're not, if you try to let them be a little more autonomous and not give a ton of instruction, like I'll see where he's worked, and it's like, there's wood chip in the beds. But for me, actually, it's embarrassing to say, but I've hand seeded so much of this that running my earthway, I imagine that would be an issue with how much mulch it is. But I've used the Never Sink, like the little zipper tool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so I'll run that open, and I hand seeded for all of my spring crops. Actually, everything that's in the ground right now is hand seeded. Oh, wow. I just got a seeder a few weeks ago, and so I look forward to using that. That'll change things.
Yes, definitely. Okay, cool. Very interesting. Yeah. And then for water, obviously you guys get a ton of rain here in Tennessee. Yeah. But you've also got some overhead?
Typically we get a lot of rain, and I mean about 44 inches in this area a year, and it's usually spread pretty well, but that hasn't been the case this summer. So I've got overhead, just some really cheap sprinklers from Tractor Supply actually that do a pretty good job of their impact sprinklers, and they do a pretty good job of laying down an even amount of water. Yeah. Sadly, they don't reach all the way to where the radishes are. I've got drip on the tomatoes and the peppers. And then the overhead definitely gets to the bed with the broccoli and the Swiss chard. The radishes, that has been hand watering with a hose and a wand, which hasn't been bad. It's actually nice because it forces you to get out and you see some things that maybe you wouldn't. That's helped with me making sure I'm on top of the weeds, etc. But I look forward to upgrading to some wobblers in definitely by next season. Neat. And getting that irrigation set really well. A bunch of pawpaws and mulberries down along the driveway here. So I mean, there's I think there's about 12 trees total, and I know the pawpaws, being an understory tree, should do pretty well in this area. That gets a lot of shade. The sun path actually works pretty well because it moves right over this gap in the trees, so they do get a good bit of sun in the summer. But yeah, I like the idea of setting up a lot of perennial systems.
Yes, that's what I love about your property.
And I know that the pawpaws, it's going to be 5 to 7 years before I see anything from them. But I really like the idea of growing kind of the only native tropical fruit to this area.
That's really special.
So yeah, a bunch of pawpaws and mulberries along the driveway here as we move down to the lower pasture.
Sweet.
So the state of Tennessee, the forestry department, you can, and I'm sure most states do this, but you can buy seedlings for really, really cheap. And so I bought, in the spring I had delivered 50 white oaks, 50 red oaks, 50 hickories, I think they were shagbark hickories, and 50 mulberry trees. And in total, that was about $180 for 200 really quality trees. And so the idea is to get a lot of, again, perennial systems in place. The mulberries will fruit within a few years, but I've kind of scattered the mulberries strategically around the property with the idea being, it's going to be great when those mulberries drop for the chickens. It's going to be great for future pork production that I'm looking to do, as well as lamb in the future. And so kind of strategically dropping those around. Same thing with the mass producing trees. So we have on the property, we have chestnuts, which I was successful this year in propagating some of those chestnuts from our standing chestnuts. More hickory, beech, which the farm is Beech Grove Farm because we have a lot of beech trees on the property. But yeah, different variations or varieties of oak and walnut. And so the idea there too is if I can capture some of that free food for the pork and have some great forest raised pork in the future, once I can get some more fencing and get some other things out of the way first, just really looking forward to kind of implementing those more long-term systems. I mean, the oaks, maybe they're going to produce in 20 years or something like that. But it's nice to see some younger understory oak and other mass trees to go with some of our massive mass-producing trees right now. And
That's
so,
really
case in point, one of our mulberries. We've run the chickens down here a couple times, which is cool because this is the roadway, and so people see that, and it generates some questions. If they see me out, they stop and they ask questions, and it's actually led to a few sales as well. And so people that live further up the road, which there's an entire development up there. Now I have a handful of people that buy veg and buy eggs from me, and I like the idea of feeding the community as close as possible, and I like the idea of if I can capture some more of those dollars from up the roadway and have them spend it here. So
it's a great little advertisement right here as they drive by.
Right?
So
I need to get a sign down here and do some other things, but yeah, for sure. And so we've got a little creek that runs through the property here. It's actually probably more easily seen on this side, but this is, I mean, it's definitely a year-round flow, but it's been so dry that it's very much a trickle right now. And so that thing rages after we get some rain. To the point where it's a little bit scary with thinking about, young kids in the future playing near it after, I mean, it's a torrent after you get like a quick. It seems like in the past few years, so many of our rain events have been these really intense, quick pulses. That thing really flows. So I'd like to get that water tested and see if there's a way maybe to use that in some way with some more of our perennial crops. So down here in this lower pasture, we've got about, I think it's around 4 acres. It's, oh, wow. I like to call it, it's our savanna.
It's beautiful down here.
I've marked a lot of the trees that aren't really going to offer us much.
I see.
As trees for me to drop. So that's been a big part of moving to this piece of land, is doing a lot of remediation in that sense, that a lot of things are overgrown, or at least overgrown in the sense for what I want to do with it. And so opening up a little bit more light to the ground to help improve forage for the future lamb, for running chickens down here, and etc. So dropping some of these trees, opening it up, and also planting. I mean, a lot of those plantings went down here. Probably about 25 of those mulberries are down in this lower pasture in various areas that make strategic sense for where I can kind of park an eggmobile and take advantage of that, or I can take advantage of it with future pig production or something like that. Very nice. One of our big perennials over here, we've got some massive blueberry bushes.
Oh yeah.
And here are our 2 chestnuts.
Oh wow, those are super developed.
Yeah, and so they drop a ton, and they really feed the wildlife. I mean, the chestnuts, they drop and then I feel like they're gone in 48 hours. It's very impressive I actually set up a game camera down here to
Oh yeah.
to watch some of the wildlife.
What's eating it?
So they haven't, as you can see, they haven't fully dropped yet. So I'll be curious. Right now, the game camera is set up on my blueberries to see what's eating my blueberries. And it turns out everything is eating my blueberries. So we've got turkeys that will literally jump and like grab a branch and just rake all the way down the branch.
Jeez.
Deer browse, tons of different birds. I thought maybe I'd see a neighbor or two on it. I haven't seen a neighbor on it. So good for them. Good for them.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, 3 rows. It's 3 different varieties. We're very fortunate that the previous landowner planted these out and planted with some intention. So she planted an early variety, which is the one closest to the roadway, kind of a middle season variety, and then this prolific late variety. And kind of the same deal. I mean, it was, they needed some work. They needed some help. Did a lot of pruning, and I still have a lot of pruning to do, as evidenced by this row especially. And amended the soil and threw some compost down and threw some wood chip mulch over that. But we tracked, not this season, but last season, and we brought in about 170 pounds of blueberries. I mean, just an unbelievable amount of blueberries. And we gave away a lot. We had people in a previous life. I owned a CrossFit gym, and we have families come out and do U-picks, and just gave away a ton of blueberries, froze a ton of blueberries. Nice. I mean, we're still working through Ziploc bags of blueberries, which is great. But this year they were really impacted. One, there's no irrigation down here, so they were impacted by that. And then 2, I think I need to figure out a way to do something to keep the turkeys and the deer and everything out. Getting back into the perennials here, I've got a row of sun chokes that actually got hit back a little bit. My young worker, Bryson is his name. I gave him a task, and I didn't give good enough parameters. This is where it always comes back on me in some way. But I gave him a task of cutting down a lot of black locust growth that was kind of encroaching in on this perennial bed, and I didn't give him a hard stop, and he just kept going. And a few months ago, just chopped all of the sunchokes down. But to their credit, in such a dry year and not receiving any watering from me, they bounce right back. I mean, they're at this point in the season, they should be 4 or 5 feet tall. But that gives me hope that they'll survive the winter. They're putting a lot of energy down into their tubers, hopefully, and they'll make it. I'd like to extend that wall a little bit further out. I look forward to, maybe not going to happen this season, but next season, seeing those flowers and having that perennial, flower that looks nice, that will help with pollinators. And also, if we want to, we can harvest some sunchoke tubers and see what that's about. I've never had it before, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's a good food system.
This is the miscanthus grass I was telling you about. And so, again, like most things on the farm, when it's been put in this spring, it's just been so dry. I don't have a real easy or efficient way to water over here. But the idea is we catch a lot of wind that comes up the driveway here from the west, and this is a little bit of a windbreak. I've got 3 little pieces of miscanthus grass here that will really bush out and fill this in and help block some of the wind for this perennial bed. This perennial bed it's a lot of different things right now. So I put a cover crop in it earlier in the season, in the spring. I also, down at the bottom here, I've got strawberries that have held on miraculously through this really dry weather. And then at the top of the bed here, between these 2 bamboo stakes, I've got 40 asparagus plants. And I mean, same thing. I've been really impressed that they've held on. I mean, one good thing about clay soils, we got a massive amount of rain in February and March, and luckily, the water holding capacity is what it is, and I think that's maybe helped a little bit. It helped also that there was cover crop. Now I've got some organic hay from a local farmer that I put down another cover crop, and I'm gonna mulch that out and try to hang on to whatever more moisture comes my way.
What cover crop are you using?
This was a mix from Johnny's, and it was just it was a winter kill cover crop. I don't recall the 3 species that are in it at this point, actually. But yeah, the idea, winter kill, lay that down,
Yeah.
and continue to just put some organic matter.
And that's all the brown we're seeing over there is like
That's the spring cover crop.
the spring cover.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. And so the asparagus, that's one variety. I believe that's Millennium. 40 crowns of that asparagus. And then I gapped up here, and I had potatoes kind of in the middle of this hillside, and we were able to harvest about 25 pounds of potatoes. So a little small harvest, but it was nice to get something out of this really depleted hillside. What's great about this, though, is it's a southern aspect. It's the perfect angle to where it captures a lot of the lower hanging sun rays in those shoulder seasons. And so this is the area that greens out the soonest. It's the area that hangs on to residual heat the longest. And so this is a great little microclimate. It probably helps too that we've got the driveway here with this hardscape that probably hangs on to a little bit of heat as well. But you can see some of the daikon radish that has still probably come back after I let it go to seed. That was part of my cover crop in the spring, actually, now that I think about it. Just to, trying to use it for what it is and just open up some of this compacted clay.
Yep.
I also had about 200 cloves of garlic, or head of garlic, planted in here that I harvested earlier this season that turned out really, really well. I amended about the first 18 inches of this with compost, and that was enough to get a really good garlic crop out of here, which sold
Sweet.
really, really well at the market, to the point that I'm going to double the amount of garlic next year. I was just really impressed with how many people were so gung-ho about locally grown garlic. So.
I've noticed that as well at my market. People love it. And the flavor is way better.
And that's the thing is, there might only have been 7 or 8 people that bought it, but once they bought it and tasted it, it was just, repeat customers, because they're like, that garlic is so amazing, I want to get more of it. And so I've ordered some different varieties, and I look forward to, and I saved a bunch of seed from the previous crop, and I look forward to really taking that up to maybe 500 or 600 cloves, planted out, I guess here in about a month or two. Yeah.
Fantastic. What are the little kind of fan leaf looking plants right there?
It's a great question. Probably just, there's a lot of
tree saplings that are coming up.
Saplings and things that have just come up. The asparagus starts here and runs, and there are 10 crowns in there. From our previous home, I brought a lot of our raspberries that I just couldn't bear to part with.
Yeah.
And I only planted maybe 5 or 6 cuttings in here, and it's now really expanded, as well as I threw some random strawberries from our previous home, and I'm surprised that they've taken off, and so there's a little bit of a strawberry understory there that's really not super functional, but has hung on. But we've been able to get a lot of raspberries from here this season.
Fun.
The girls are excited. And so that's that bed there. Then we get into just some kind of long-term, slow, cold composting systems that I've been running with so many other things to do on the farm to get it up to speed. It's just dumping compost in, balancing as best I can the nitrogen and carbon, and then just leaving it. Yeah. This one's been here now close to a year. The backside there, I just finished filling that probably in the spring, and it's amazing how much this stuff settles too. This was ground up here, and now it's all the way down. I actually look forward to peeling off the cardboard and getting into this a little bit later this fall when I do some plantings and seeing what it looks like.
Fun.
Yeah. Some of the seedlings that I had left over from that order, I just popped into this used compost bed just to keep them alive. When they go dormant this fall, I'll plant those out somewhere.
What are those?
Those are mostly all oak.
Oak.
And so this is that compost I was telling you about. This is a mushroom compost. You can smell it. It's super raw.
Yeah.
The guy on Craigslist, he said that he aged it for 6 months. I have a really hard time believing that that's anywhere close to being accurate.
It smells definitely more fungal than me.
Yeah. So I had 10 yards dropped here.
Do they make you, is it free, or do they make you pay a little bit? Or?
This, so if you went to Monterey, which is where they grow the mushrooms, if you went there, at least in years past, you could get it for free.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's,
it was worth something.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah.
And so this guy, he's got a massive Isuzu triaxle, and he gets 10 yards at a time. and brings it to his place, wherever that is, and then post on Craigslist. And yeah, so I got some from him, hoping, you know, as in so many other places, one of the hardest things to do is bringing in good compost. And so I've been trying various different people, different companies, and haven't settled on, I mean, there isn't a really good one.
Interesting.
So making some of my own with these slow kind of cold composting systems, and yeah, continuing to just experiment with different composts in the area. I mean, that's such an industry that East Tennessee really needs, is someone to just make good compost. And I mean, I would spend, whereas right now I spend $20 to $30 a yard, for good compost I'd spend $70, $80, $90 a yard.
Wow.
Just because the need, especially as you're taking a piece of land that doesn't have a whole lot of life in the soil and you're trying to bring it online, I need a lot of compost. So yeah.
Big time. Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, these, the top at least was my original Salatin pen that when I lived in Knoxville, I ran 25 broilers in our backyard in the middle of a, you know, suburban Knoxville. And it worked out really well. We processed those birds and put them in the freezer and ate on those, I mean, close to a year. But it was, I really like the idea. I mean, chickens are such a great way to really start to boost the soil life, and to really improve the grass and the forage and everything. Where I've run these the most is some of the best pasture, if we want to call it that, on the property. I mean, it's amazing what they can do, you know, bringing in nutrients in the form of their feed and them running it through their biological systems and then crapping it out. It really makes for a good nitrogen source and a lot of different microorganisms that are in there. I don't know if we could say a chicken has guts. I guess in a sense they do. Yeah. And so yeah, it's been really good. But these girls, I really didn't want to have them in here still. They've started laying. I bought these as day-old chicks. Yeah, they started laying a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now at this point. They need to be incorporated in with the other flock. So on the next move of the eggmobile, I'll bring it down and kind of enclose everything inside of the electric net, introduce the girls to each other, and then prop this open the next day and let them kind of mingle and get them into the eggmobile.
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Yeah, it's no fun to carry feed and water out to here all the time. It'll be nice to get everything in one spot. But yeah, let's take a look at the orchard.
Yeah, I'm excited to look at this.
And so this area had 4 or 5 pretty massive trees. So there were 2 really big poplars. There was a really good sized red maple. There was and a couple gum trees. And so I dropped, I mean, they're great trees, and I loved, you know, looking out my back deck and seeing them, but I really wanted to have this as a productive functioning system in another sense. And so dropped those, converted most of it into firewood, which we heat our home with firewood and a wood burning stove. And then I built out 4 swales, just slightly off contour. And so the swales are 1% running downhill, more or less, bringing water from the hardscape of the driveway, bringing that water. It runs in between these 2 oaks, the white oak further away from us, red oak here. And it used to just cut through and really erode some of the ground and the pasture down there. Now that water is captured by these swales and it's moved out to this drier ridge over here. I mean, most of it is, you know, slowed and spread and sunk here in the swales, but on really big rain events, it moves it out to a really dry ridge. And I've seen a lot of this grass bounce back already because of that. And I just put these in this spring. So the little bit of rain that we've had has done a really good job of getting into, you know, putting it where I need it.
Right. And what is a swale, the basic description of a swale, just for those who have never heard of that concept before?
Yeah, sure. So a swale is really you're building a ditch, if you will, and you're moving that soil and that mass onto the downhill side of it. And so most of the time, a swale is on contour and it's trapping and capturing that water. And it's usually quite a bit bigger than this. So typically, the uphill side of it is a little bit deeper in cut, and the swale itself is oftentimes bigger because it's more for holding water. Here, it's more for moving water. But at that 1% slope, it's a very slow movement, and most everything, unless it's a really big rain event, gets sunk into the ground here and into the swale.
So when you say that 1% slope, that means that the swales, the trench essentially is slightly tilted downwards. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 1% is basically there's a fall. I believe the way it works, it's a fall of 1 inch over a 100-inch gap. I believe is what it is. And so that 1%, yeah, it just moves water very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And so I laid this out. I just watched a YouTube video and built an A-frame level with a plumb line and marked what 1% would be on either side, and just set it up.
Yep.
Put a stake, pivoted, put a stake, pivoted, put a stake, and yeah, that's how I marked out this entire pasture. And so there are about 70 fruit trees, or various trees actually, in here.
What's the species you're doing
So
here?
there's a big mix. So trying to make it as much of a polyculture as possible. I've kind of run it as nitrogen fixing tree. In my case, it's all honey locusts, so thornless honey locusts. So nitrogen fixing tree, apple, pear, nitrogen fixing tree, apple, peach, and just kind of ran that pattern throughout these swales. And so a lot of apples, pears, peaches, plums, apricot, mulberries, and cherries. I think that's it. And now what I'm working towards is interplanting these trees. So the trees are anywhere between 10 and 12 feet spacings.
Okay.
And I'll interplant with some fruiting bushes. So I already have some mulberries in. I've got this fall, I've got a bunch more mulberries coming. I'm sorry, not mulberries, elderberries.
Oh, cool.
So I have a bunch of elderberries in right now. I've got a bunch more coming, red currant, black currant. So I'm looking forward to kind of filling those gaps now in between the trees. And then in the understory, doing a lot of things to just kind of keep this weed pressure out as best I can until these trees grow up to shade the area. And so some things that I'll be planting, rhubarb. Actually, that was something that I was really surprised at how many people at the market wanted rhubarb.
Yeah.
And no one had it.
Yeah. Dude, you grow Swiss chard?
Yes.
How many people asked you if it was rhubarb?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like, every market, so many people ask me that.
Especially the rainbow, and they're like, It's like, no. But so that kind of, listening to my market, and I said, okay, I'm going to plant rhubarb then. And what a great, there's a great perennial crop that you don't really need to do a lot with. And there's a built-in market here locally.
Yep.
So rhubarb, horseradish, sorrel, wild senna, Sicily, hyssop. So a lot of different, again, just trying to make this as a polyculture as much as I can, bringing in pollinators, some things that are productive and I can get a harvest from. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that fill out more and more.
Beautiful.
Some bee balm, some butterfly bushes, some mints.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, a lot of work ahead of me this fall for planting. But luckily I have some friends that are some city folk that are really easy to convince, like, hey, come work on the farm. And they'll come and give me a day's worth of work if I feed them and give them a beer at the end of the day. So,
Sounds like fun.
I'll tell you, speaking of deer, that's been my biggest struggle here.
Oh, they're coming after the trees, huh?
This poor cherry, I can't even say all that's left. They've eaten it down several times, and this budded out just recently. So
a little cage around it till it gets established.
Yeah. So that's what I did. I found on Craigslist a guy who had an electric net. It wasn't one of the poultry nets, though. It was big gaps up top, smaller at the bottom. Almost like what you would put around a market garden to keep deer and other animals out. And he was getting rid of it for cheap. And I see why now, because of the way it's built, it's such a pain to move, to pick up and gather, and it's very different than the poultry net. But I set that up around the bottom two swales, and that helped a lot. The deer right now come from that lower pasture that we were in. They cross the creek, they come right up that hill. Okay. And so I was seeing that most of the pressure was the bottom two swales. So I fenced those out with the electric net.
And you had some benefit from that?
And had some benefit. But yeah, my longest swale is this third from the bottom here. And as you can see, most of the trees have hung on and done really well.
Yep.
But I guess because it's close to the woods, so close to cover, the deer have just decimated this poor cherry here. But in between these, right now I've tried to do some annuals. Like I did some watermelons.
Oh, good.
I planted out some onion, planted out some pumpkin, planted out various things to just try to utilize the space that I have right now. But there's a mulberry. Here's the nitrogen fixing honey locust.
Honey locust.
Yeah,
okay,
thornless
cool.
variety. And it's, again, it's this tale of dry weather, but things have held on really well. And if you got an aerial view of this, like with a drone or something, you can even see it from the deck. This ground here, you can tell it's just been really charged from what the swale has captured and sunk, because compared to the really dry grass up here, this flush is much greener. It's much more verdant, and this is the case in between all of these swales.
Interesting.
And towards the end where that water gets moved. So it's really beautiful to see that system in play.
So Grant, what are your plans looking forward on this swale system, this perennial system that you set up? What do you intend to harvest the fruit to sell that? Running animals?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, first I would say I'm still exploring that a little bit, right? Figuring out what is going to work. I mean, in a true permaculture setting, I would have moved to this property, or I would have visited this property over the course of a year and really seen everything in play and seen it in all seasons. And I kind of, was impetuous, and I just wanted to get in there and start doing things.
Of course.
So I'm still figuring that out a little bit. The idea, though, I'm really into perennial food systems. I really like kind of I don't remember the guy's name, restoration agriculture.
Mark Shepard?
Mark Shepard, yeah. And some of those things. I like the idea of letting these perennial food systems do a lot of the work for you. Where, in particular, feeding future animals and livestock that I run through here, running sheep through these swales, the chickens that I run through right now, having a lot of that fruit drop cleared up by animals and turned into bacon, turned into lamb chops, turned into eggs. So continuing to explore what's capable with more perennial food systems. I have the market garden, and I think that's definitely a thing that can generate a lot of income very quickly, but it's also a lot of work, as you know, as all market gardeners know. And I think that I like the idea of letting the perennial food systems work for me a little bit more, and working a little bit more with nature and with these natural systems. And in a lot of sense, agriculture, even a market garden system that's no-till and low input, there's still something very unnatural about it. And I like the idea of, again, working with the natural system here in this permaculture orchard.
Love it, man. That's the same. I think the same way, and that's where I hope to take things someday as well.
That's the dream,
it's
right?
Beautiful. Yeah, it's the dream. Yeah, full circle.
Definitely.
And then, what are your plans, I guess, for your farm in general, looking forward into the future? What do you would like to do? I guess you're still experimenting a lot, trying to figure out what the market will bear and that sort of thing. Yeah.
There's a little bit of exploration going on with what the market wants, pricing things. So I'm outside of Knoxville, and right now I sell mostly in this market here in Seymour, and the prices that I can charge here in Seymour are very different than what I could charge if I went out to Knoxville. And eventually I plan to get out into that market and demand a little bit higher price for my goods and services. But yeah, that's the big thing right now, is exploring what the market wants, what it will bear. And again, also just exploring what I'm capable of doing here on the farm. One thing in my context that is kind of the touchstone for everything that I do is being a new dad and having a 6-month-old. And I'm the primary caretaker there. My wife is a school psychologist, and so making sure that I'm taking care of Tallulah, our daughter, and giving her the life that we kind of want her to have. But intertwined in that is a lot of what we're doing here. Like this is the life that we want her to have, and so it's cool to see those two things overlap so significantly. We want her to grow up where she has a bunch of wide open spaces, where there can be these lessons, even if they are kind of very subconscious, of how nature works and how ecosystems are built and maintained. And so balancing food production, balancing my work life on the farm with being a dad that's taking care of a little newborn. But some of the long range goals that I do have: running sheep, I'm tired of mowing things down. Like, why not let the sheep do that work for me, enrich the soil, have a product that I can sell. There's a lot of forest here. We're on 22 acres. Most of it, more than half of it is wooded, running some forest raised pork, continuing to run broiler chickens, egg layers, and just building those systems out slowly over time. And again, always balancing it with that work and rest or life ratio.
Really, yeah, beautiful. Love it. Can't wait to come back in the future and then see how this whole system's developed over the next couple of years, and it'll be exciting to see that.
Definitely, look forward to it.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Well, Grant, thank you so much for showing me your farm. It was just really incredible. I learned so much, and I love all the work that you're doing with the perennial food systems and how you're incorporating animals, and just very excited to come back in the future and to see all the great work that you're up to.
Yeah, thank you.
If people want to learn more about you, follow along on your journey and see what you're working on over the next few years, where can they follow you?
Yeah, before that, thank you for all of the material that you've put out on YouTube and continue to do. That's very beneficial for farmers like me who are first-generation farmers and really kind of learning these things as we go. So thank you. But people at home can follow along on the journey. Instagram is at Beech Grove Farm TN, and website is beechgrove.farm, although the website is very new and under construction. But yeah, follow along the journey on Instagram. It's the best place to see it.
Yeah, and if you're in Seymour, Tennessee, hit him up for some awesome eggs and produce.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, that's going to be it for this episode of Nature's Always Right. Thanks for watching. Be sure to watch all the other farm tours that I've done on this Tennessee trip and all the other things. I'll put a link down in the description for that playlist. All right, see you guys later. Bye.
Adios.